listening to Just Pod, Baby, a Las Vegas Raiders podcast brought to you by silverandblacktoday.com. And now your host, Evan Groat.
And let's go, Raider Nation. Welcome back to Just Pod, Baby. Excited to bring you another new episode this week. Of course, you can catch us as part of the Silver and Black Today Media Group. Don't forget to tune into the weekly radio show on CBS Sports Radio Las Vegas, 1140 a.m., or catch it on the radio.com app. And we are on summer hour, so you can catch the show live from 8 to 9 a.m. Pacific time, of course. And if you miss it, you can find it on the Silver and Black Today YouTube page as well. Also, you can find my interviews with Mick Robertson, Trent Brown, and Isaiah Johnson. So there's really no excuses for you not to listen to all the great content we are putting out there for you and your listening pleasures. Now, later in the show, I'll be joined by Mick Akers of the Las Vegas Review-Journal to talk progress over at Allegiant Stadium, the new team headquarters, and also he will give us an update on the parking situation, tailgating, and he will let us know if all this is being done on time and on budget. Also this week, we are joined by Josh Schrock, reporter from NBC Sports Bay Area, and he will talk to us about a piece that he put out last week detailing why he feels Derek Carr is prime for a big year in 2020. Now, I don't want to jinx us or anything, but it does start to feel like we are starting to get some relief from the coronavirus. It's beginning to feel like we are now on the other side of this whole mess. We are seeing more states throughout the country starting to slowly and carefully begin the reopening process. Governors from many states have come out on the record and stated that they do have a start date in mind for pro sports teams. So things are definitely starting to look up from that standpoint. Now, last week we began the show by talking about how the commissioner had just recently told teams that they are to continue to conduct virtual meetings and workouts until at least May 29th. But late last week, on Friday, in fact, we got some good news from the commissioner. He sent out another memo telling teams that they could begin opening their team facilities as early as Tuesday under very strict guidelines. Now, the players and coaches are not among those players allowed in the building, and the reason behind that is equity. It would not be fair to allow one team in one state, which regulations allow them to get into their buildings, to do so when there's a team playing for another state who obviously their state regulations do not allow so. Now, only 50% of the staff is allowed back in the building. That's no more than 75 people max. And the list of people that are included are training staff, team doctors, nutritionists, and there is a exception to the rule with players. If you are a player who is rehabbing an injury, you are allowed back into the building to continue to do so. So it's a small step in the right direction, but still a long ways to go here for the league. Now, I want to discuss some comments that were made by the NFL's chief medical officer, Dr. Alan Sills. On Tuesday, he was asked this about a possible timeline and when he thinks players could return to the field, and he really declined to comment, saying that we are not putting dates on a calendar at this point. So I still believe it's highly unlikely that we see teams together for mini camps in June, and a more realistic target date still remains to be July for training camp. I think that's the goal that we all have in mind here. I think the next 4 weeks will be very telling in terms of how we're doing as a country in limiting the amounts of new cases as states begin to slowly reopen. I also think that the NFL could really learn from other sports like baseball and basketball as they try to jumpstart their seasons. Now, obviously, football it's a different animal. Social distancing it's much easier in a sport like golf or tennis or even baseball. Football, there's physical contact happening on every single play. So, it really presents some unique challenges that the league is going to have to continue to try to work around. Now, real quick, before I go to a break, I read an article this week on some of the steps that the league is looking into as far as protecting players is concerned. And one of the things that they are now testing is protective gear, a face mask that uses surgical or the N95 mask material. Now, again, they're only in the testing stages of that, but certainly the league is not going to leave any rock unturned as they are, in their quest to keep players safe. Okay, so I'm going to step aside, and when I return, we'll be joined by our first guest, Mick Akers, and he's going to talk to us about the progress being made at Allegiant Stadium, as well as the Raiders' new team headquarters and training facilities in Henderson. And welcome back to Just Pod Baby, part of the Silver and Black Today Media Group. We're going to shift gears now and talk a little bit about the new Allegiant Stadium, the new team headquarters and the training facility out in Henderson. And joining us in the conversation is Mick Akers, a reporter for Las Vegas Review-Journal. Mick, thanks for joining us on Just Pod Baby. How are you tonight?
Great. How you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you for asking. Now, Mick, you do a great job of keeping us all informed on the latest developments with the Raiders' move to Las Vegas. Before we get into the stadium, can you just kind of give us, living outside the Las Vegas area, just a kind of a general update on where the state of Nevada stands as far as their reopening process is concerned?
Yeah, so I guess we're in a 4-phase reopening process. Right now, we're in stage 1 that could end on this week on Friday. Just kind of depends on where the governor sees, where the progress is. So after that, we go into phase 2, 3, and 4. Right now, some businesses are open. You can go inside some dine-in restaurants. They're all at 50% capacity, have to wear masks and such. So right now, we're just kind of waiting on that. No casinos are open. A lot of operators are hoping for a June 1st reopening. They've been kind of setting these dates throughout the whole shutdown, and so far we've passed each one without any openings. So we'll see if this June 1st one, kind of plays out and actually see some casino openings, because obviously that would be a big deal for Southern Nevada to see some people come back in.
Good. That's glad to hear. It sounds like there is some hope on the horizon. Now, let's get into the stadium talk here. You've tweeted out photos recently of several different things being done over there at the stadium, whether it was exterior lights that were being tested or the Allegiant Stadium signs that were going up. You even showed us a look at one of the restroom facilities and what that's going to look like. Now, things appear to be on track despite the coronavirus pandemic. How are things looking from a schedule standpoint, and is that completion date of July 2020 still on the table?
Yeah, so as far as, the coronavirus, they've had, at least 16 workers on the site test positive for coronavirus. Since March, there's been over 4,000 workers go through the site. So obviously, it's a small percentage of those. And once they do identify a worker that has it, they go and shut that area down and do a disinfectant and send the worker home for 2 weeks. So everything on that end, they're trying to keep it under control. And it seems like they're working with the local health district here, and, it's kind of working out to their advantage with that. They did some testing on some of the workers and such. So as far as the schedule, everything, still remains for the July 31st deadline there. They just been pushing forward. They kind of shifted some schedules around, making some more late night ones, can kind of spread out some of the workload and the workers, not to have so many on the site at one time. A lot of, milestones have been hit with the signage, the lighting. They laid the grass down outside, so that was a big one. Everyone's waiting for that. They tested the field tray that it lays on before they laid the grass on to make sure they can move it in and out and everything worked properly. So, everything, is full steam ahead over there at Allegiant.
That's perfect. Now you kind of led me into what my next question was, and you kind of already answered part of it. Now, one of some of the many unique features with this new Raider Stadium is that transparent ETFE roof and the field tray system, as you just mentioned. You already kind of told us about the field tray. They did lay the sod and they did test it out, and it does seem to be working properly. Can you give us an update on the progress of the roof?
Yeah, so that was complete a few weeks back. It was delayed, or it was supposed to, from the cable net roofing pan. The panels are laid on a cable net roof system, like 120 steel cables. So during that process of raising those up from the field level all the way up to the roof, they had a couple of issues there, so they had some delays, to which they worked around with the schedule, pushing forward some things. They were supposed to start this spring, and they completed those in the fall and the winter. So once they got all that, into place, they got the cable nets up, and then they put the ETFE roof panels, which are kind of like large pillows that they lay across, and they kind of piece it together like a big puzzle. They finished that, a few weeks back. So, the roof is completely finished. Nothing else can be done there. They're just adding another Allegiant Stadium logo on top, of which they have one on the west side already, and they're adding a new one on the east. So, as far as the roof looks like, that thing's completely done.
Yeah, it really is beautiful from what I've seen from all the pictures and whatnot. Now, one of the other major concerns that fans have had all along with this idea of a stadium in the heart of a place like Las Vegas nearby the Strip has been on-site parking and the tailgating opportunities or lack thereof, which was a big part of the game day experience in Oakland. Now, this, of course, this could all be a non-issue if games are played this year without fans. But what is the latest in regards that you're hearing as to parking on site, possible off-site parking that could be in walking distance of the stadium, shuttles that are going to be offered, and if you have any updates on the tailgating situation?
Yes, it's like you said, it's been something that people have been talking about ever since they even brought the first plans out. There's about 2,700 spaces on site. A lot of those are going to be for like VIP staff players and such. There'll be some areas of tailgate on the stadium side that you'll be able to do that on the area where they store the field tray when it's inside. And it's going to be kind of converted into a mini tailgating area. So as far as parking, there's about 25,000 spaces, kind of mapped out around the Allegiant Stadium. Some you can park and shuttle, some you can park and walk, kind of just, what you're willing to pay on that end. So there's about 15,000 of those in walking distance, which they haven't really said what they consider walking distance, but, just from some of the stuff I've seen, a mile to 2 miles, nothing too bad. Summertime, it might be a little hot, but, a lot of the locals here are used to walking in the heat anyway, so not a big deal on that front. And then got about 7,000 tailgating spots. Those are also included on some of those off-site spots and some on, the stadium side as well. And then they got about the furthest away is 2,000 spaces. It's near Warm Springs and Las Vegas Boulevard, which is, I would say, about 8 or 9 miles away from the stadium, where you park and ride a shuttle over. I think that would be a pretty good option for people looking for the value on the parking, because that'll be one of the lower priced ones there. So, although there's not, a major amount of parking on site, obviously any stadium that's been built, in recent years in a, metropolitan area, there's not a lot of space around it. So, it's kind of just, going with what's been going on anyway with the recent NFL stadiums.
Yeah, now to me, I'm not I don't live in Las Vegas, but I know personally when I go to visit a place like Las Vegas, I'm totally prepared to do some walking. So, I would assume that a large amount of the fans that were going to be coming to these games, at least early on before the team can really establish some roots in the state, in the city, they're going to be traveling from different parts of California. And don't forget, Raider Nation is a fan base that spans all over the country. And most of these people, like myself, are going to be coming in for the weekend. They're going to be getting a room. And so I'm sure that they're totally prepared to walk, half a mile or a mile to the stadium. So in my opinion, I think the issue of walking is being way overblown. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think mainly those grumbles are coming from the people that live in Oakland and have been going to games out there. Ever since they announced the move here, it's been like 50-50, it seems like, for the fan base out there. Like some of them, support it, and then, the ones are, no matter what you tell them, they're just going to give you a negative feedback on whatever you're talking about. So a lot of that, I think, just comes from the stay in Oakland, fans there. But, like I said, a lot of people come here and walk the Strip. That's basically like one of the things people do. They walk from, casino to casino, checking out the different ones. So a lot of people come here and they walk several miles a day. Obviously, it's pretty hot, but, we've got enough air-conditioned areas around the Strip and plenty of drinking and food options along the way. So, like you said, it's going to be just like a normal checking out another attraction here in Las Vegas. But, this one just has a, NFL team attached to it.
Yeah, now I live over on the East Coast, and trust me, I know that it can get to be 95, 100 degrees out there in Las Vegas, but there's nothing like the humidity we have out here on the East Coast on a summer day when it's, when it's 85, 90 degrees with all that humidity. It feels much hotter, so I think a lot of these fans will be fine. Now, Mick Akers, reporter from the Las Vegas Review-Journal, joining us here on Just Pod Baby. Mick, another one of the major concerns for a project of this magnitude is the budget. Now, things get much more complicated for a project like Allegiant Stadium when some of that money in that budget is tied to hotel room tax revenue. Now, with Vegas being shut down for the last several weeks, I know that the hotel business has taken a major hit. What can you tell us about some of that tax revenue and the shape of the budget overall as we are now just a couple months away from this project being completed?
Yeah, so obviously, with basically no one filling up the hotel rooms here, just the ones that don't have a casino attached could have people staying there. So you do see some people staying in some of these outlying hotels. Obviously, it's taken a big hit on the room tax. Dropped about 55%. Compared to last year from March numbers. So obviously, it took a big hit. But with the way they set up this whole system, they added a reserve with the room tax. So they were kind of funneling away some money each month to that reserve. And at this point, they have about $67 million in there. So that equates to they can basically go 18 months without seeing a dime from the room tax, from people coming to Las Vegas and be okay as far as budgeting and paying for the room tax related expenses. So, even though it's never a good thing to see $0 coming in or, next to zero, they are prepared and they have enough money to, weather the storm here.
Wow, that was a smart move by somebody there to have the thought process to think down the road of or maybe something going wrong like this. That was a really smart move there. Now, I'd like to talk about the new team headquarters that's being built out in Henderson, Nevada. I believe the project is nearly complete. You may be able to tell me a little bit more about that, but how are things progressing there and what are the latest developments?
Yeah, so, that thing's located probably like 4 miles away from my house. So I stop by, every other day or so just to see what's going on. And every time I go over there, something new pops up. So they got a lot of the signage up there. The two main Raiders Shield logos are up there, 27 feet by 27 feet. Kind of hard to miss. They're lighting those up the other day and kind of blended in with the desert sunsets we get out here, made a nice little picture opportunity out there. And then, a lot of work's going on around. They started some of the paving. So, now there's some parking lot pavement. It's not just a building in the middle of dirt. It's actually, looking like a facility, kind of making it seem this, hey, it's coming to reality here. They laid the grass for 3 outdoor fields there about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So that's all been ready to go way before they started doing any of the grass laying out at the stadium. So they got the three NFL fields outside, and then inside they're going to have 1.5 fields. And we haven't been able to go inside for a while. I usually get tours every month or so, but with the coronavirus pandemic, only workers are allowed inside. So we've been kind of waiting to get inside there, but just from what we've been hearing, it's progressing pretty well inside. Some of the offices, executive areas are all coming together here. They're supposed to move in June, so it seems like they've kind of been putting the pedal down to get that done, get some of these executives out here and get some of the processes that are happening over in Alameda to come out here and happen in Las Vegas. So, the June date looks like it's on schedule. Like they've been, everything they've been doing, even though people have been doubting them the whole time that they're not going to get any of these things done on time, and they've been proving people wrong. So obviously, I guess they have the team that know what they're doing and get some of this work done here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's excellent. Very, very exciting news there, Mick. Now, just one last thing I'd like to get your thoughts on. I'm sure you've seen that the tickets for these Raider games are extremely high in demand. They're sold out, really, and the only place you can get these tickets now are on the secondary market, where the prices are through the roof. They've increased over 500% from last year. It's just nuts. What does this tell you about the excitement of the Raiders coming to town and the possibility of having sustainable long-term success for the organization in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I think that was kind of proven right off the bat. They sold out all the PSLs in January, which means all the season tickets are sold out as well. So that shows you right there that there was excitement, and these are long-term deals, obviously. So you're gonna have to pay for these every year. So there's a long waiting list of thousands of people. For anyone that drops off, doesn't pay their PSLs and gets rid of them. There's people ready to take those over. So it looks like this thing's gonna be sold out for a long time. And with the new stadium coming on board and the Raiders kicking off in Las Vegas, and a lot of people are dying to come and see a game here, check out the new stadium, kind of get the feel of the new Raiders. So those, aftermarket ticket values are skyrocketed. They're number one in the NFL right now, and no surprise, even beating SoFi Stadium, which, is going to open up about 300 miles away from us in Los Angeles with the Rams and the Chargers there. So, I don't think any kind of questions are going to be around, sustainability, obviously with the success of the Golden Knights here. That people kind of doubted that at first, like, it's not a hockey market. We know this Las Vegas was known mainly as a basketball market because, they're running Rebels and, we really didn't have anything else. We had the Summer League, NBA Summer League, so that's why, that basketball, moniker kind of stuck with Vegas. But once the Knights came out here and kind of lifted the value up after, the October 1 shooting and kind of rallied around, the area, the Las Vegas Valley show, they can and they will support a team. And, the Knights have been winning, so that helps as well. So, the test is going to be, hey, when the Raiders come here and if they have another struggling season, what's the fans going to be like? But I think that's going to be a couple years down the line because, it's going to take a while for this newness to wear off the stadium because, not everybody's going to be able to get in there in the first season, 65,000 seats. And we got nearly 3 million people in the Valley. And then, like you mentioned before, so many people are going to be traveling here to see the games from all over. So it's going to take a few years, but as long as they get winning, I think there's going to be no issue at all with, sustaining this here.
Yeah, I know I'm excited. I already bought my tickets to week 4. I'm going to, hopefully fans are allowed into these games, and, I'm making the trip out there for the Raiders versus Bills, so I just can't wait now. Mick, I appreciate you jumping on with me tonight. Do yourself a favor. If you don't, give Mick a follow on Twitter. That's at Mick Akers. He's the best in the business when it comes to keeping you updated with the stadium and the progress of the headquarters. He posts great pictures and a very good follow. So thanks again, Mick. Keep up the good work.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'll look forward to seeing you out here.
And we're back on Just Pod Baby. Great spot there by Mick Akers as he gave you some real good news as far as the progress is concerned for the stadium. It looks as if the 2020 July date is still a go. The team training facilities and headquarters in Henderson should be scheduled to open in just about a month. So a lot of good news there on that front. Okay, we are going to change topics here. I want to keep this thing rolling right along here with our next guest, so don't go anywhere and check it out. One of the topics as we enter the 2020 season is, of course, quarterback Derek Carr. There was some speculation whether or not he would be leading this team into Las Vegas. We now know indeed he will be the man. John Gruden and Mike Mayock invested heavily on offensive playmakers in the draft, which has some now believing that Derek Carr could be in for a big year. One of those people is our next guest, writer-reporter for NBC Sports Bay Area, and that is Josh Schrock. Josh, thanks for joining Just Pod Baby. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Josh, I want to begin talking all about your piece. I thought it was a very, very well done, by the way, that you put out last week, and you highlighted why you think Derek Carr is primed for a big year in 2020. Before we get into some of the details of your piece, I think I would like to just quickly discuss what is your barometer for what you think could be considered a big year. I mean, is it better statistics, maybe a better touchdown to interception ratio, or maybe just the team wins more games?
Yeah, I think it's going to be probably a combination of all of that, right? He was statistically had one of his, he had a career year last year statistically from a numbers perspective, 70.4% passes completed. The wins weren't there. There were a number of moments, the 4th and goal throwaway against the Titans. A couple times he just couldn't get it done. So I think it's wins, but it's also just overall, it's more explosive plays. It's getting better on 3rd down. It's getting better in the red zone, converting red zone opportunities from field goals to touchdowns. So it's a combination of all things, I think.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that Carr's numbers could remain relatively the same and the team's record actually improve if, as you mentioned, Carr and the offense can improve in some of those timely situations. We saw many times last year where especially in the second half of games, where they just struggled to move the ball, pick up first downs, went scoreless many second halves. The red zone efficiency, as you mentioned, was not very good. And of course, they did have a lot of injuries also that played a role in all that. So what's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it came down to last year they just didn't have a lot of depth and they didn't have a lot of talent, right? After Antonio Brown did his thing, he kind of just threw a wrench in everything, and John Gruden had to adjust on the fly. They went to a more run-heavy attack, a lot of 3 tight ends. John Gruden's very good at scripting plays and scripting games. We found that out early. The Raiders get off to a lot of quick starts, and as you mentioned, they kind of peter out, stall out in the second half, and I think a lot of that is lack of explosive playmakers on offense last year, injuries. Tyrell Williams was hampered. And then teams just kind of keyed in on Darren Waller, and Derek Carr just didn't really have anywhere else to go with the ball other than Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Now in the piece, you lay out many examples of why there's reason to believe that Carr will make a significant jump in year 3 with Gruden, and you start with what you call a full arsenal. So tell us why you believe Carr finally has the weapons around him to be successful.
Yeah. I mean, the last time he had anywhere close to the amount of weapons he has this year was in 2016, 2017 when he had Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree and Jared Cook. So they went out, they drafted Henry Ruggs, who we all know 4.27 speed. He's a vertical guy who can stretch the field, but he's going to do a lot more than that. They're going to get the ball in his hands, jet sweeps, fly sweeps, screens. And look, he's a guy who Derek Carr excels on throwing slants. We know that. He's a guy who can take a 6-yard slant and turn it into a 70-yard gain. And that's something the Raiders just didn't have last year. And then they went out and got Ryan Edwards, who I'm a big fan of. I don't know how many snaps he's going to get this year, but he'll definitely take Tyrell Williams' spot eventually. He's a good red zone option. He's a jump ball guy. He could be a big slot guy. He can help them move the chains on third down. And Jason Witten, as old as he is, he's also going to be a big target in the red zone, and I think just his leadership will help them. So they went from an offensive arsenal that was really just Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow, and Tyrell Williams at 20%, and a 0 on the other side, right? Zay Jones never got chemistry with Derek Carr. Keelan Doss was not a so they went from that to having 3 or 4 guys who can change the look of a game in a snap, right? You get the ball in Henry Ruggs' hand, and all of a sudden it's not 2nd and 8 from your own 19, it's 1st and 10 from the opponent's 8, and that's going to be a big plus for this offense.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those new additions. Henry Ruggs, obviously, through the draft, along with Brian Edwards. You talked about Jason Witten, who was also brought in, Nelson Aguilar, and let's not forget Lynn Bowden Jr. Of all these new toys that Carr has, is there one in particular that you think will have a really big impact on the offense early on this year?
Early on it's going to be Ruggs, and it might not even show up numbers-wise, but I just think having a guy with that kind of game-changing speed is going to open up the rest of the field for Waller, for Renfrow, for a healthy Tyrell Williams, and it's also going to probably lessen the pressure in the box on Josh Jacobs, right? We saw it last year, especially in the second half. Teams would just load up the box because they knew the Raiders just wanted to pound the ball, and then throw it on third down. So I think Henry Ruggs, maybe he doesn't have an electric start to the season, but he's going to play a big role, and defenses are going to have to focus and make sure that speed doesn't beat them. So I think early on it's going to be important for Henry Ruggs to at least show he can be a big factor.
Yeah, so we've talked about all this talent that was added to the roster, whether it was through free agency or through the draft, and you combine those talents with a pretty good group of tight ends like Darren Waller and Foster Moreau. You've mentioned Josh Jacobs, and of course they have a very, very good offensive line. Do you think now that the Raiders are all out of excuses, is it put up or shut up time for not only Derek Carr but also for John Gruden as well?
Yeah, probably not John Gruden, right? I think that's why he's got the 10-year, $100 million contract. True. He's gonna get a lot of rope, but I think what the Raiders did this offseason was, they put it all in Derek Carr's lap, right? I think the good thing about having a quarterback like Derek Carr during a rebuild is he's at his basement. He's an average NFL quarterback who can win you games, and with talent around him, maybe he can be a guy who can win you playoff games. But what he allowed John Gruden to do is go out and rebuild the rest of the roster and not focus on the quarterback position. And now that the offense is built up, the line, when healthy, we know is really good, got a lot of weapons now. And this season is going to be basically what I think the Raiders did is they just gave Derek Carr all the weapons he could want. They negated all the excuses that he's had, and now it's time for him to prove he can be the franchise quarterback, or they will go another way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely think this is the year that Derek Carr has to prove that he is that franchise quarterback, and they're going to be moving forward with him, in the future here. Josh Schrock, NBC Sports Bay Area reporter, doing a great job here on Just Pod Baby. Now, Carr and Gruden are entering that critical third year together. And as you pointed out, and I thought it was a very good point that you made, this is the first time in Carr's career that he will be in the same system for the third year. And it's really hard to believe. And I think Carr should deserve some credit for that, being so flexible with all the coming and going and that's been going on around him. But explain to us why you believe the third year together is so important.
Yeah, I think, one, it's a really complex system that John Gruden runs, right? Derek Carr and Gruden have both talked about how long it just took him that first year, to get all the terminology down. Gruden would call a plan, and Derek would take him a little bit to process everything. And last year he got in the flow. He had really good command. He was really good at audibling at the line. He just kind of, you saw him start to get the full grasp of it. And I think a whole nother offseason with the playbook, I think this is just the time where everything can come together. We saw it with Rich Gannon during Gruden's first stint. He put up career highs in completion percentage, yardage, interception percentage, and rating in his third season with Gruden. Of course, basically all those got blown away. He blew those out of the water in his first season with Bill Callahan the next year. But I think this is going to be big for Carr. Just, as you pointed out, he hasn't had that yet. And stability for quarterbacks, no matter how good you are, is always important. So I think that this is going to go a long way just to have him not spend an offseason learning a new system. Now it's the third offseason in the same system. I think he can get in a groove.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting that you made that comparison to the jump that Gannon took in his third year, setting those career highs, because, when Raider fans look at the quarterback position over the last, 20 years, the standard that we want to see is what Rich Gannon was able to do. So we are hoping that Derek Carr can make those same strides. Now, another one of the reasons that you suggest that you think Carr is primed for a big season is what you call thickened skin. And again, this is a very interesting point you bring up, because when you think about the range of emotions that Carr has gone through with this organization, going back all the way to 2016 when they got off to that great start and were one of the better teams in the AFC that year. He went down with a broken leg. He came back the following season. The team struggled. He was booed in the final game in Oakland this past year. There was talks about him being replaced this offseason. Just a complete roller coaster ride. And now Carr comes out this offseason and says, you know what, I don't care about what you and I have to say. And he seems to have this new mentality. How do you think this new me against the world mentality will help him on the field?
Yeah, I think Derek is aware, as we talked about, that this is a really important year for his future with the Raiders and for the future of his NFL career in general as a starting quarterback. We know he's got the arm talent. He can be really good. And I think that just going through, how many off seasons has he sat there and listened to, talk of the Raiders whining and dining X quarterback, or they're interested in so-and-so, or they're going to move up and draft this guy. And he's still the guy, but I think he's a very, he's worn his emotions on his sleeve a lot. And I think not giving a damn what anyone else thinks is going to help him focus and just want to prove everyone wrong and prove that he's the guy that he thinks he is, and that he's the guy who can lead the Raiders, back to prominence and where everyone wants them to be. So I think it's important for him to have that mentality, and I think that's a winning mentality for a lot of elite quarterbacks have.
Yeah, certainly. There's never been any questions about his leadership abilities or his arm talent. It's really come back to the mental side of the game for Carr. So hopefully we'll see a major improvement there. Now, the last thing I do want to discuss with you, Josh, is the addition of Marcus Mariota. To this point in Carr's career, he's never had a real threat behind him at the backup quarterback position. Now with Mariota in the room, that obviously changes. Now, I think, in my opinion, this plays out in two ways for Carr. Either he will thrive and he will rise to the occasion, or the pressure of having a capable backup quarterback with the high expectations, all the things that you just talked about, that could kind of cause him to crumble a bit. Now, do you think that the added fuel to the fire will help Carr? Tell us why.
Yeah, I mean, I think initially it's certainly a motivating factor. I mean, Derek and Marcus are friendly. They had the same leg injury in 2016. They've shared experiences. But now Derek is looking over his shoulder right before. He'd make a mistake, and it's like, John Gruden's not going to go to Mike Glennon, or A.J. McCarron's not coming into the ballgame. He knows that. But now, I mean, the Raiders invested heavily in Marcus Mariota. Mike Mayock and John Gruden have been on the record how much they love him. And it's going to take time to try to get Mariota back to the quarterback that he can be. So I don't think Derek's going to be looking over his shoulder initially. But, I mean, I think having that pressure and knowing your job's on the line can be a good thing. And, you're not wrong. Like maybe it's too much and he crumbles and Mariota takes over. But I think it'll be a good kind of motivating factor to give Derek even more of a reason to show that they didn't need to go out and spend the money they spent on Marcus Mariota and make him the highest paid backup in the NFL.
Yeah, it certainly will be interesting to see how this all plays out. Josh, I want to thank you very much for spending some time with us. You can find more of Josh's work over at NBCSports.com, as well as the Raiders Talk podcast with Scott Bair. Josh, keep up the good work, and we will hopefully talk to you again sometime down the road.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, we're back to close this one out. I want to thank Josh Schrock and Mick Akers for joining me on the show. Hope everyone has a great Memorial Day weekend. Be sure to tune into the show next week. We've got a great guest lined up for you. I'm excited about that one. Please leave me a review and a rating on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you get the show. And of course, just win, baby.